Okay, so that's one perspective. Let me go now to one of the 19 high-profile Canadians who have a very different perspective. They are the ones that sent the letter to the Prime Minister asking for the release of Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou so China will free Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. Prime Minister is not on board. Andrew Scheer is not on board. What do some of the signatories of the letter think? Let's find out. The former Liberal Foreign Affairs Minister, Lloyd Axworthy, who signed on to the letter, joins us now. Always good to see you, Mr. Axworthy, and I hope you and the family are well. You heard Andrew Scheer just before, and you've heard Justin Trudeau. Their response is, you guys are way off base. You're rewarding China for hostage diplomacy. What's your answer?
Well, Evan, I think it shows the danger of using cliches as a basis for making foreign policy decisions. And I think this is not a question of scoring political points on one side or the other, or appealing to different constituencies. I think the purpose behind the letter, and it was to be a private letter, we didn't expect it to be public, but nevertheless it's there, that is to look at some new options, to put a fresh light on what's happening. Clearly what's not happening is any movement towards the release of the two Michaels. And they deserve better than that. I think there is no reason why we are kind of engaging in this whole sort of combat about words and definitions of rule of law and integrity of the courts. It's an extradition act. That's an administrative act. The Minister of Justice has responsibility for overseeing extradition. It's not a matter even of intervening. He or she have the right to judge when is the extradition serving Canadian interest and international interest. I think what we're saying right now is that those interests are not being served. And let me just make this one comment. When Prime Minister Chrétien appointed me as the Foreign Affairs Minister, my first priority in my mandate there was protect and defend citizens abroad. So the question is, how do you do that? Well, the one way of doing it is to make sure that you use all the tools available to you. And I think the fact that we've kind of elevated this issue of extradition into some kind of high-principled effort really ignores the fact that you've got two Canadians in a sordid prison condition facing espionage charges, which could result in very severe penalties. And we have to do something to provide them a launch pad for liberation of their situation. And what we're saying is, number one, okay, I'm sorry. Evan, go ahead.
I just want to ask you, because the Prime Minister was pretty adamant today. He said, look, I understand what your view is, and I want to protect Canadians. But if I now, and I know that the Justice Minister has the ability to intervene, but the Justice Minister didn't. And at this moment, that would essentially put a price on Canadians' head. In this case, China's basically offering a 2-for-1 deal. 2 Canadians that we've locked up in exchange for 1 Huawei exec. He says that is a terrible precedent and would undermine the very system of global system of rule of law that Canada is trying to enforce. What would your response to the Prime Minister be?
Well, there's no evidence to back up that statement. I mean, if there is, but I spent close to 5 years in foreign affairs, was involved in a number of similar kinds of issues, and I think each case is exceptional. It's its own circumstance, its own context. And if you want some proof of just how sort of variable this all is, look, just last week, the Trump administration negotiated and gave a swap of a scientist that they had in their possession with a military person in Iran, and they did the swap. There was no big precedent setting. I don't think the Trump administration would say, well, this is setting a bad precedent that people are going to attack Americans around the world. Why are we using that argument? Because it's not based on any sound demonstration. Look,
but sir, I just want to push back. If China has openly, and they've sort of admitted that they arrested the 2 Michaels, and they put them under this horrific situation because of the Meng Wanzhou situation, if we release Meng Wanzhou for whatever the technical reason that the Justice Minister comes up with on the extradition case before it unfolds, doesn't that reward China? Wouldn't China say, this is fantastic, we'll just keep kidnapping people whenever we don't like the rules?
Evan, to be honest, I mean, that really is not the way these things work. China did it because they realized that the accusations against Madame Meng were coming out of a very strong, almost Cold War dynamic going on between China and the United States. And we've sided with one side of that. But the whole point is there are two Canadians' lives at stake, and their families, and their comfort. And I think that this is a specious argument, to be blunt about it. And I think it goes back to the idea that you have to make foreign policy based on experience, on judgments, and on evidence, not on what happens to be sort of a good soundbite. And that's what I'm concerned about. What we were really offering the Prime Minister is not to say we are being declaratory, no truck or trade. We're saying it's time to look at some other options, time to provide a little bit more flexibility and agility in trying to see how we can get these people released.
Mr. Axworthy, your time and your interest in this are always welcome. I really appreciate your time, sir. Thank you. Good to connect again.
Thanks, Evan. Good to talk to you.